Coffee and Pan Dulce. How's that? Coffee and Pan Dulce.
Barb Bacon, and I'm a community advocate here in South Charlotte. If I had my buttons on today, it would be, let's get some gun control. I'm tired of looking at the news and seeing this. Black Lives Matter in honor of our friend Joel. And let's have equal rights for everybody.
This is James Gunn. I am a community advocate here in Charlotte, North Carolina for LGBT women's rights with the National Organization for Women, gun sense laws with Moms and Men Action, and anything that extends equity to all. Thank you.
Christian Cano, you're the co-host. My buttons are Moms and Men Action, gun sense legislation, healthcare for all, Medicare for all, and also in my heart, Black Lives Matter on behalf of Joe Oldham, who's a guest of ours who passed away last year. That's it.
Good morning, everybody. It is Coffee and Pan Dulce time, and we're already in May. I'm Jenny James Gunn, along with my co-host Christian Cano, but it is May 3rd already.
Happy May!
We're right on top of Cinco De Mayo, which is a very popular white people holiday that get obliterated.
That's right.
And I guess Cinco de Mayo, I didn't even think about it till now, is going to fall on a Friday. Is that right?
Yeah, it's going to be Party Friday. Party Friday.
It's going to be crazy this weekend.
Crazy.
Our neighbors will be here in Charlotte. They'll be out, getting obliterated on margaritas and cold beer.
Right.
Hopefully some Bud Lights. And so how you doing?
Good, Jenny. It's funny. I don't know why. This image is flashing through my head of these MAGA performative fools walking into a Mexican restaurant on that Friday to celebrate Cinco de Mayo on the border or some chain, and seeing all these Bud Light Cinco de Mayo banners around going, oh.
It's just so weird. I did see a video
my goodness.
of a woman that, and it's the weirdest clip. I just saw it a day or two before we recorded this, and she has looks like an AR-15 or one of their guns, and she has this table full of cases of Bud Light. But the weirdest thing about them, it's not new or original, or that they're shooting off their guns against Bud Light.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's that there's a clothing line, like one to dry your clothes.
Yeah,
and it's right behind the Bud Light, but it's above it. Like it's higher, but it's above it.
Yeah. Is she shooting her clothes?
No, but I don't think she even thought about it. But it's a clothing line, and it has drawing a bunch of bras.
Oh,
I guess they're her bras. I'm assuming they're her bras.
Oh, yeah, maybe. Yeah,
she's not necessarily hitting the bras,
but she's just, you can see them in the background.
But it's just weird, and it's not like 1, 2. It's like 10, pretty fancy looking, like $40, $50, $60 bras.
Yeah.
And she's a younger, very attractive blonde, probably mid to late 20s.
Yeah.
And she looks like an AR-15 Barbie out there just shooting these things up. I just thought it was weird. They're kind of a weird group of people. As Jenny said, welcome everyone to Coffee and Pan Dulce. I'm Christian Cano, one of your co-hosts, along with Jenny Gunn, Barb Bacon. Barb Bacon is off today again. She's doing her endless charity work that she does in her retirement ages. We want to thank everyone who's joining us on Facebook Live, but also those who join us on YouTube and the thousands who listen to us on your favorite audio podcast platform. As Jenny said, when this drops, this will be May 3rd, 2 days before Cinco de Mayo. And we also want to welcome everyone to May, all the May babies out there. There's some story behind that one. Today's topic is Cinco de Mayo versus Diez Y Seis. It's our annual show. We've done this every year for about 3 or 4 years now. I can't remember now. But we'll be talking about explaining the difference between these two. But as we always do, we will first go into Barb's current events.
This is Barb's current events.
All right, so here's Barb's current events. Jenny doesn't know this except the last one because I wanted to clear the last one with her. So these are going to be fun Barb's current events. The first event, before we go into Barb's current events, I just want to let Jen know, as she knows, we're trying to do our best on the show today, just in case there are CNN or Fox News scouts out there because they have some holes to fill. So who knows, Jen? Maybe we'll be on. That's a joke. That's a joke. She talked about this on her show afterwards. So
it would be a lot funnier if we ended up on the Fox network. Can you imagine?
Oh, wouldn't that be funny? We could be. What is that? Desperate and Diamond, or what are the two black ladies that?
Well, especially
Desperate and Diamond.
Especially if we replace Tucker. Can you?
Oh my goodness.
Oh my gosh! They put gay porn on Fox News.
They would just be outraged. Well, we'd have to dress in drag as a drag king, which was Tucker Carlson.
Yeah, because he really.
I think he was a drag king. Yeah. I think he was. All right. Okay.
Yeah.
That's an in-depth joke. Okay.
Dangerous territory there, my friend.
Yeah. That's right. Okay. Here's the first Barb's current events. It does seem like the Associated Press is catching on. There was reported they did a story. When you see this, as Jenny always likes to explain to people, we tape a week before. So the week that Tucker Carlson and Don Lemon were fired on that Black Monday or whatever they want to call it, the Associated Press did a story on a trend on social media with a hashtag called Not a Drag Queen. Apparently, people all around the country are starting to post. I don't know if they're watching the show. I don't know. But they're starting to post articles about people getting arrested or getting in trouble for molesting, for sexual deviancy, all the terms that they've been calling the LGBTQ community, the MAGAs, over the last 2 years and longer, that they've said, hey, these are not drag queens. And so that is a trend going on right now that it's, I think Baby Z's are doing it. They're basically saying, hey, we just want to remind y'all, these are people aren't the drag queens. So that's the first one. The second one, there was an article that came out and they did a story about how, I'll just read you the topic. Gen Zs are buying up homes, how they got so lucky, and how millennials got screwed. They're talking about how Gen Zs, 30% of Gen Zs owned homes that were at least 25 years of age in 2022. That is the highest generation since the boomers to own homes. Gen Zs are 30%, millennials were only at 25%, and Gen Xers were only at 27%. And so somehow they have, there was a story that came out about how they, and one of the reasons it says is because they were, it came into the housing market at the same time that a stronger labor market was occurring, so they had more dispensable income. But the whole story is about how the millennials got screwed. because they came in when they were having a hard time. All right, the last one. This is an interesting one. There's stories coming out. I think the Washington Post first broke this story, or the New York Times, that the chief doctor in Florida, the Surgeon General of Florida, that it is now coming out that he actually personally altered a COVID vaccine study in 2022 that came out. He actually purposely kept some information from the study because he wanted the narrative to come out that vaccines were dangerous for young men. The reason I thought this was very important is because when our family went to South Florida to go visit some family at that time, we have a young nephew who lives in Miami who literally referred to this study and said one of the reasons that he was cautious about getting vaccine was because the studies have come out that it can have long-term impacts on young men. He was actually reading this fake study. And so it shows you how things like this can happen. So with that said, Jenny, we'll let you have at it for however you want to address these.
And especially when in light of, even though it's a different version of fraud, it shows how relevant pursuing this and pursuing the truth and pursuing the propaganda machine that comes from the Republican Party and the Dominion lawsuit, I think, set a great precedent for clapping back at alt-right organizations, whether it's Fox News, whether it's the Republican Party, the Proud Boys, Moms for Tyranny, Liberty, that this is terrorism, this is fascism, is that, the Nazi Party was really good at crafting lies, and the bigger the lie, the more believable it was. It's literally their theme. And when you craft a medical study, first of all, this guy needs to be removed from his job. He has no right being in a job like that. Altering a medical study that could lead to you making an uninformed decision that could get you killed, literally could get you. COVID, is a deadly virus. And to tell people in the general population, and plus just the effects of long COVID, is so irresponsible that it's criminal. That anybody of a certain age that was male in Florida that read this study and made a decision based on that study, which was probably a lot, because I'm sure they prop this up a lot, and you hear these studies come out that is counter to the long-term research being done all over the world, and you're going, it sounds like bullshit. And in this case, it is. And this study influenced a lot of people, not only just in Florida, but across the United States. Well, the narrative was, and I've heard this several times, that it causes myocarditis and heart issues.
That's exactly what
amongst young men, young teen
he
boys.
Pulled that out of the study,
and
he put that in the study, something like that.
Yeah, he put it in the study.
Yeah,
and it wasn't true, and it's COVID that causes that.
Yeah.
So he switched it from COVID causing it to the vaccine causing it, and a lot of other doctors had railed against this study. It's not shocking that finally the truth came out, and that again, Republicans will lie about anything, even if it kills people, even if it kills conservatives. Like, it just is so bizarre. Like, you still got people, and I just saw it this week. The people were saying I saw this on Twitter. This one conservative said a whole thing about masks don't work.
Yeah.
And I just like, you need to let it go. You need to quit lying.
Exactly. Let it go.
It's time for them to let it go because it's bullshit. Every legit mask study, there's a reason why surgeons wear masks. There's a reason why medical personnel wears masks. It's not because it's a fashion statement. The other two deals was
not a drag queen and the Baby Z's home ownership.
So not a drag queen, not trans, hashtags have been going on for quite a while, especially the last 6-7 months when they've been going after the trans community and calling us pedophiles and groomers and you know, you even got this one group called Gays Against Groomers. The problem is that the gay men and lesbians that are behind this group are targeting trans people. So we have our own community doing it. Of course, most of those people are Nazis themselves.
Well, there's wackos in all groups, yeah.
Yeah, but in general, the Republican targeting of the trans community, which really when they're targeting the drag community, they're really targeting, if you look at the laws they passed that are anti-drag, it's really targeting more the trans community.
Yeah.
That's using a very popular form of entertainment to still get at the trans community predominantly, and trans women more specifically. Most of these laws are anti-trans women, trans girls. All the things they cite when it's a trans sports bill is really targeting trans girls. It's not targeting trans boys, because trans boys are assigned female at birth and trans girls are assigned male at birth, and then they're transitioning away from that gender identity. And so this whole, and how they've tied pedophilia into that is just bizarre, because the truth is there's several groups. Anonymous is doing it. Several people I follow on Twitter, they're making a kind of an overarching list. One has 41 or 42 pages, over 1,000 Republican pedophiles. And so they're making this overarching list that can be downloaded. It can be, they've got 40 plus articles listing them in the articles and what sex crimes they did. And the majority of it, sex crimes against kids, with some sex crimes against adults, sexual assault against adult women. And they're all Republicans. They're all registered Republicans, or they're Republican officials like sheriffs, or a lot of them are pastors. You know, what a surprise, youth pastors molesting kids. It never happened. And they're making this list to prove a point.
Yeah.
Is it people that are pointing the fingers, the guilty scream the loudest. And that's what the hashtag is all about. Yeah, it's great. I follow the people that actually do this. I put them up on my Instagram story a lot, almost every day. I highlight another special rapist pedophile of the Republican Party. And what's great is they take a screenshot of their voter registration on this as well. And so they don't, unless it's a Republican official, like they're a Republican sheriff, obviously we know they're a Republican.
Yeah, then they wouldn't have to.
That aren't in politics, but are typically pastors and coaches, and especially wrestling coaches for some reason. They make sure they look up their voter registration. And what a surprise. Haven't seen any Democrats yet, but I've seen a whole ton of Republicans.
Yeah. Well, but rest assured, when there's one, they'll say, see?
Yeah, well, there's one.
That's how they operate.
You know, it's just like the trans shooter in Nashville. The trans people and the gay people are coming after churches now. It's they wanted be the victim. Now, not discounting that their parents, the man's parents, the trans male's parents, are Republicans, very wacko Christian extremists. And the fact that the school's a Christian extremist school, and you just imagine, and that the shooter actually went to that school, attended that school.
Yeah, I mean, think about it, Jenny. I mean, you have a good point. The case could be made. Yes, this is what happens when your kids grow up in a religious family and go to a religious school. They go crazy.
Well, it's grooming. It's violence grooming. Look at all the
exactly.
How can you? So when Bobert's kids grow up and all these other.
Hey, Jen, let's save that one. We'll talk about it a little bit. But how about the Baby Z's home ownership? What do you think about that one?
I think the Baby Z's generation, first of all, is probably the most savvy generation ever. I think they're smarter than the older generations, including the millennials. I think they're more tech savvy. Which is led them to more powerful careers. Tech jobs typically pay higher. They take a lot of technical training, obviously, whether you go to a coding boot camp or a school for it or whatever you do. And I think the Baby Z saw what happened to the millennials, in the 2007, 2008 Great Recession, when we saw the housing market and mortgage companies just go away. And they go, well, we're not going to let that happen to us. And it's not a shade on the millennials as much as I think it's just the timing. The Baby Z's are coming of age where they're getting into the early parts of their careers. Yeah. They've got a couple things on their side. You think about 2007, 2008, smartphones were just emerging. Technology was just emerging. We have seen an absolute boom of technology jobs because the technology market is so much larger than it was. That was 15, 16 years ago. That was an entire generation ago. And
God, it's hard to believe that was not very long ago. Yeah.
And also that the millennials, because of all those problems, turned out for Obama.
Yeah.
That was the big story of the 2008 election, was how many young people voted for Obama. I think the millennials and the Baby Z's are both victims of horrible Republican policies. It's one of the reasons it's the most progressive deal. I just think the Baby Z's benefited from the fact that now the 23rd year of the 21st century, our technologies emerged and it's created massive amounts of jobs. Okay. So again, it's a boom, almost like the manufacturing era boom of the 50s and 60s benefited the baby boomers the most.
Yeah.
All those pesky little ends we hate. I think this is the same kind of era that boomed for baby boomers 70 years ago, 60 years ago.
Except for the Z's.
Is creating a new burgeoning middle class for the Baby Z's because they jumped on the technology, because Baby Z's don't know a world without the internet technology. They had no chance. And so I think it's a sign of the times. I think two is that the Baby Z's seem to adapt and learn faster, maybe because of technology. They can just Google everything. Go, you're fucking full of shit. Here it is. And they move on and learn. They just learn faster than we did.
Okay. And, hey, listen, we're up against our first break. We're going to keep talking about this, but let's take our first break. We'll be right back on Coffee Pan Dulce right after this.
Hey, y'all. Thanks for watching. And support local Black and brown businesses, including our sponsor, Manolo Bakery. That has some fabulous pastries, food, king cakes, all kinds of specialty cakes, tamales, and much, much more. Some of the best food we eat in Charlotte, North Carolina. Again, Manolo's Bakery, right here in East Charlotte. Thanks for watching.
Well, welcome back. Good points. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Jen. You're talking to Baby Z's. Yeah.
Well, and even look at our generation, Gen X, and
who I've been saying is the crappiest generation ever.
Yeah, I mean, we both have been saying this.
Not
for
all
years.
of us. Most.
But our Google machine was encyclopedias.
That's right.
Going to the local library, going to the school library. We just didn't have the technology. We were in that gap.
We used, and then we started to use Yahoo. And what was the other one? Mr. Jeeves. Was it Mr. Jeeves? It was like a search engine called Mr. Jeeves or something. I can't remember.
That must have been. I think it was probably a porn search engine or something.
No,
I am like Mike's apartment. Captain Stabbing. But anyway, we didn't grow up with technology per se. Like it was starting to emerge. The first gaming stations like the Atari 2600 and things like that. But that was mostly like to play games. And, we came of age when you actually had arcades with big old gaming machines and Miss Pac-Man and Galaga and all that.
Had our quarters. Yeah.
Oh, we had a sack of quarters like we were.
That's right.
Out, like,
a roll of quarters. Remember you'd like.
The fact that we touched those dirty, greasy quarters that have been touched by every other kid and their booger fingers is just like, we grew up in such a goofy, innocent time when the baby boomers were making massive amounts of money. We were almost like a trust fund generation.
Yes, that's why we're disconnected.
We grew up in a really pocket of almost innocence before the internet, before a lot of technology changed or emerged. But we didn't really grow up in an era of expansion. It was just kind of There wasn't a great movement during our deal. We didn't have a major war going on, and so I think the reason why Baby Z's fight so hard is because they've seen what happened to Generation X, that in some cases is the parent or even grandparent of the Baby Z's. Yeah, and they're looking at them going, yeah, we just don't want this to happen to us. We just don't want it.
That's a good point.
Is a lot of millennials don't even own homes still, getting into their 40s, and they're going, we need to invest, we need to go into better careers. We and also too the fact that you have movements like Fight for 15, you have movements saying, okay, the job market is robust. This is the time to really push the labor movements. This is the time to unionize in Amazon and Starbucks and all these places. And you're seeing a very roaring 20s approach to America, but with technology. Yeah. And so I think these next generations, Baby Z's and Baby Alpha, you're going to see some very aggressive generations.
Well, I hope so. I mean, I definitely hope so. Yeah, exactly. And as I mentioned, today's topic is Cinco de Mayo versus Diez Y Seis. Rest assured, we will actually touch on that, maybe for 30 seconds, but we will touch on it. With the Florida anti-vax thing, I thought that was so, this guy, when he took the Surgeon General, when Dick Suckus, the governor, our nickname for that governor there, when he took that, he was already kind of an anti-masker, anti-vaxxer person. That's one of the reasons why he appointed him, was because he wanted someone that would continue his narrative. And so basically, what happened was...
one thing I do want to interject, a really important point. Governor DeSantis' number one campaign donor is a major stockholder in those long-term viral aftercare programs for COVID. And the governor put up a bunch of those clinics all over Florida. And those vials of that medication, you can't use it if they take the vaccine and they don't get that sick. It's hard to sell $2,000 treatments to people that don't need it. And so there was a very anti-prevention campaign that went on in the state of Florida, and magically the state sponsored a whole bunch of these therapies that his major campaign donor happened to have $10 million invested into it. So, I always think there's a money factor or a power factor behind anything. It wasn't that they just wanted to spread COVID, even though that's what ended up happening and killing a lot of people, because there's another article out about Florida's high death rate that was one of the highest in the world per capita, at like 250 per 100,000.
Yeah. It turns out what happened was, and this was reported, when you see this, it was reported last week, which is the week that we actually tape it, that it says that he is being accused of, he removed part of a study to make it appear as though the mRNA vaccine posed a higher risk of cardio issues with young men that had previously been determined by the medical community. The study raised eyebrows at the time, and Lapato, that's his name, he falsely edited the study when he released it. So that's been, we'll see what happens with that. I don't think, he may have to resign or something, because he's not going to be able to get a job. Just like with Trump, a lot of the medical people who started working for Trump are having a very difficult time getting jobs afterwards, because go figure, in science, they actually don't like people who lie. They want people who follow science instead of people who go against science. I wish we had Dr. Beyond. Yeah, exactly. I wish we had Dr. Beyond for this one.
Or encourage people to risk their lives and not taking a proven vaccine that was.
That would be, that's a good point, Jenny. That would be equivalent to a pediatrician telling a parent, it's okay for your child to go ahead and suck on these batteries. Just don't let them swallow them, because the only danger is if they swallow them. The lead paint is okay. Just don't let them swallow the lead paint. Yeah. So it's like, that would be,
it's how twisted the Republicans have become. Is the fact that they got their state's top doctor. That's a friggin' wacko to say, don't do any of that pesky preventative care. Like, let's not. That's so counter to the medical industry of doing no harm. The Hippocratic Oath, that pesky little thing that doctors have to uphold, is that you have a top doctor that has the power of being a doctor in their state. I'm getting feedback, and saying, "Don't you get no vaccine because it'll hurt."
Well, and that's what was and so in the baby disease, I thought that was a really good, interesting article, because basically what they did is they compared ownerships of the last three generations, X's, millennials, and Z's. And as I mentioned, those percentages. So the baby Z's are actually, they have surpassed their peers in home ownership at the earliest stages, and they did it at 25. And so 30% of baby Z's own homes, which is it's a higher rate, but also earlier than millennials and Gen Xers, and they attribute a lot of that to, they came into the market with a strong market, so they had dispensable income. A lot of it was probably generational wealth that was being passed along to them. I know here in Charlotte, we always wonder who's buying that $1 million home. It's like, how the heck can they afford $1 million, $800,000 home? It is amazing, these houses.
And for the longest, up until recently, interest rates were at historic lows too. So when you have, most of the technology jobs are going to go to people that are under 30. So you had an interesting influx that baby Z's are coming into their mid-20s, upper 20s. They got the degrees that are the most common of the time. They're training, which is going to be something technology. With this, like, everybody walks around with a supercomputer in their hand that's called a smartphone. And so there's so many development jobs that are needed that weren't needed 20 years ago when this technology didn't even exist. And there's so much opportunity. Historic low interest rates, historical low unemployment, which drove wages up the last couple of years. I don't think it's a coincidence that and we were always told, you buy a home. When you become successful, you buy a home. And especially with the millennials struggling to buy homes when they were in their 20s and early 30s, because they came of age during the Great Recession. And so I think you have all those factors have just collided at the right time for the millennials. It collided at the wrong time.
Yeah, exactly. And you have a lot of
And I think also too, I think COVID had a lot to do with it too. People are going, I'm living in this nice apartment and I'm paying good money, but I really should be buying a house. Look what happened. We may have another pandemic.
I'm going to have to work from home. I might as well. Yeah.
I need a home office. I need a yard to do stuff in so we can social distance. I think that all these factors, these socioeconomic factors, really changed America. And of course, the younger generations are going to adapt the fastest. I mean, a 25-year-old versus a 75-year-old, a 25-year-old is probably going to adapt faster because they're starting to get into their prime earning years. So it makes sense that this adaptiveness in this worldwide pandemic is shaping Generation Z and making them make decisions based on practicality, which I think Generation Z not only is more progressive, but it's also more common sense. It's going to be a very common.
Yeah.
It's going to look at issues like COVID or economics or careers, and they're going to go, I'm going to pick the most practical pathways because this is our new reality. So
Jen, hold that thought, because I want to talk about that when we come back from our second break. So we'll be right back on Coffee and Pan Dulce. We'll be right back right after this. Hey everyone, thank you so much for watching our Coffee and Pan Dulce show every week. Don't forget you can watch us visually on our video podcast platforms on Facebook and YouTube, but you can also listen to us on your favorite audio podcast platforms like Apple, Amazon, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and all of the other ones that your favorite, whatever your favorite is. Once again, thank you for watching us on Coffee and Pan Dulce. We'll dance out. Well, welcome back. And so that's an excellent point, Jenny, because we've been talking about the rhetoric coming from today's MAGA. And I have been saying how I don't understand how it's not sustainable. It's not a message that attracts younger people or even people from outside their party, which any political party or any organization cannot survive unless you can grow. Church can't grow unless they have younger kids to fill up. So when the older people die, their families take over the church and they pay tithes and whatever. The MAGA political party is set up as if though they don't want to grow. All they want is a certain amount of people, older white people, more poor, lesser educated white people from rural areas. It's not sustainable. So that's why the baby Z's to me are just brilliant, because they are saying, why do I want to be part of the MAGA? It's not a winning proposition. Why do I want to be a MAGA?
Well, but I also think too, the typical MAGA, which is going to be our generation and the baby boomers. So that 50 and up crowd. The 50 and up crowd knows, hey, we've got less years in front of us than we do behind us. We know we've gotten away with this shitbag mentality for so long. And I'm talking specifically about white conservatives.
Yeah.
And they now see the writing on the wall. There's no way of avoiding the fact that white people are not going to be over 50% of the population. That's changing between now and 2026. Hence, that's what the white replacement theory is, trying to convince people that they purposely are purging out white people. And, these white conservatives have been a victim of their own success. The fact that they've perpetrated lies, supply side economics, all these different drug wars for profit, this whole time Christianity with patriotism and guns and all this. They've pandered they've created all these false narratives and lies to the point to where now it's so easy to disprove them that they've turned into the clown show that they are now.
Yeah.
And that they're not the norm anymore, that people can see through it, and especially the younger generations. because these younger generations have paid the price for that bullshit. They've inherited a much worse United States that's on a serious decline, that we have turned into a dumpster fire and a joke of a nation because of these two older generations. The Republicans have created this problem for themselves on their own. No, they don't have anybody to blame. And when you rape and pillage your country for as long as they have, and just like the fall of the Soviet Union, that raped and pillaged their country for as long as they could, we're at a crossroads. We're either going to be the next Soviet Union, and we're going to break up as a country, and we're going to bust up and to different republics and things like that, or Generation Z and the millennial generation is going to go, fuck that shit. Let's put Grandpa in the home, and let's wrestle this country back into some semblance of a cohesive nation. And that's why you're seeing that not trans, not drag. This is why you're seeing huge protests like we saw in the summer of 2020, which the most of those people out there were Generation Z. Most people out there, and we even saw young white men, Generation Z white men, 18, 19.
That's the first time I've ever seen that.
Not dragged by their girlfriends to the deal or their boyfriends. You saw a young generation out there of activists saying enough is enough. Enough is enough. And they're just not having it.
So we're going to take our third break, but we've got a little bit of time. So I do need to talk about this topic. Cinco de Mayo versus Diez Y Seis. If you watch this every year, you know what the difference is, but we're just in case you've watched this for the first time, we'll kind of talk about the big difference. There is a very big difference between Cinco de Mayo and Diez Y Seis. Jenny says it all the time, and I think it's hilarious because she said it on her show, which comes on after this one. Cinco de Mayo is more of a white person kind of celebration. There are very, very few people in Mexico, south of the border, that celebrate Cinco de Mayo. Cinco de Mayo was actually a victory, the Battle of Pueblo. Is that what it was? The Battle of Pueblo. Okay, so it's kind of a celebration that was invented by the beer companies to celebrate at restaurants and Cinco de Mayo, and that's what Cinco de Mayo is.
If I owned Corona beer or Dos Equis, or any of the other very popular Mexican beers, or I owned a Tex-Mex restaurant of any kind, any kind of Mexican, Spanish restaurant, Latin American restaurant, I would celebrate the shit out of Cinco de Mayo. That's what happened. Like for Irish pubs and Irish foods, St. Patty's Day,
St. Patrick's Day,
and you got Guinness going. Guinness sales goes remarkably up on that day, and so why would you not? To me, it's a manufactured holiday like St. Valentine's Day. It's the chocolate companies and the florists and all really push that narrative, and it's a commercial holiday. It's a dead time of the year too. When you think about it's before Mother's Day generally. It's before like the big festivals really start to come out. It's kind of one of those fun, playful. It's not hurting anybody type holiday. Does it have a significance in Latin culture? No, and especially in Mexico. No. But the Mexican nationals are scratching themselves and going.
They're like, all right, you want to come and.
But the good thing is,
I'll take your money.
A lot of Latinx businesses, and it's like Taco Tuesday benefits a lot of Latinx businesses. I think it's great. I think it's great from a consumerism point of view.
Well, Rafael Preto, who was on our show, I think last year before, and we talked about this, and he talked about how he likes the fact that it gives people. It gives Latino restaurants or Latinx restaurants, Hispanic restaurants, an opportunity to have business in the restaurant that maybe they would normally have. But the interesting thing is Diez Y Seis, which is really, that's Mexican Independence Day. That's in September. Very rarely do you find someone who celebrates that unless you know about Diez Y Seis. We celebrate it. But interesting, growing up in Texas, and I don't know if you remember this, Jenny, I don't ever remember celebrating, growing up in Texas, Cinco de Mayo. We celebrated Diez Y Seis. When I got older in college, I remember Cinco de Mayo, going to restaurants, putting on sombreros, drinking beer, margaritas, all kinds. It was more, and the reason I don't really remember it was because we had a thing called Mayfest in Texas that people would celebrate. It was like a festival, and it was so close to Cinco de Mayo that everyone went to the Mayfest celebrations. And maybe there were some churches.
Maybe in North Texas though, because
North Texas, that's right.
So in South Texas, especially in the touristy areas like San Antonio, on the Riverwalk, Cinco de Mayo did get celebrated.
Okay.
Maybe not to the level as now.
Yeah.
In fact, I think a lot of the Cinco de Mayo celebrations probably originally started in San Antonio, because I remember
there was a reason. Yep.
Is on the Riverwalk, it'd be you'd have mariachi bands playing.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And that I do remember that as a kid, seeing that in San Antonio and seeing the highlight, but it wasn't as big as now.
Yeah. Now it's just it's a big marketing thing.
It's spilled out of the cities that are dominated. Well, like a San Diego or a San Antonio or a Los Angeles that has large Hispanic populations.
Yeah.
But also remember too, in September, having the Hispanic Heritage Months, having the more, and I think it's because Hispanic Heritage Month, which usually starts in or around September 16th, is more not only a community-wide honoring of the community. I think it's more like Black History Month. It's more educational and less celebratory, versus Juneteenth is historical, but now it's turned into more like parties at the park.
Yes.
Celebration. So there's a very celebratory thing honoring Juneteenth versus Black History Month, educating about innovative Black leaders and things of that nature, and actually delving into the historical significance of Black History Month and why we have it. And so I think in other words, September 16th and Hispanic Heritage Month just isn't that sexy. It just isn't that fun.
Okay,
and Americans, as we've seen, especially the last few years, we'd rather throw a party or fight than to fucking honor education. Like I think
So let's wrap this up. So when we do this show, people won't remember hardly any of the show except this one little segment we're going to do. So Jenny, once again, for those who don't understand what the difference is between Cinco de Mayo and Diez Y Seis, explain to your white brothers and sisters what it is.
So Cinco de Mayo does honor the Battle of Puebla.
Okay.
It's not Mexican Independence Day. It has nothing to do with Mexican independence, because Mexican independence from Spain came in September 16th, many moons ago.
Diez Y Seis.
Diez Y Seis. But they're, basically, it's a chance for us to drink Mexican beers and eat lots of Tex-Mex. For May 5th or Cinco de Mayo, like I'll tell you. Here's a good story.
Yeah.
Here's a really good story that proves how commercial Cinco de Mayo has become. So I moved to Branson, Missouri to take a resort job in 2004. And Branson, Missouri, in the county that it sits in, is 97% white. It is the whitest place I've ever lived. I felt like it was going to be, Jim Baker's there. That's how white it is. And they have a major Cinco de Mayo celebration there. And not even 1% of the population is Latinx or Hispanic. I mean, they have one Mexican food place and a Taco Bell there. And the Taco Bell's all white people. The Mexican food place has one family that runs it. And the food is phenomenal. I mean, but in reality, oh yeah, and they have an upscale El Chico down there. It's called by a different name, but it's owned by the company out of Dallas called El Chico. Other than that, and those people that work on that, it's on a main touristy riverfront thing, and it's very white. It's white people Tex-Mex, and you're muted. But to prove my point, and here's the best part. So these white people have this little. It's got several pubs and things of this nature. This one little it's kind of in a valley right off the main drag, the main strip of Branson, and they have it every year. It's gated, it's ticketed. They have bands. It's a big celebration full of white people, but they don't always do it on May 5th. They do it usually on the first Saturday of May. That could be. So the first year I went, it was Ocho de Mayo because it was May 8th. True fucking story. So they don't do it on May 5th. They do it when it's convenient for white people, mostly locals.
Sure.
So you have all these bands, almost none of them are Latinx, because there's no Latinx people there. Celebrating, it basically looks like a mosh pit celebrating Cinco de Mayo, even if it's not May 5th.
So it
is absolutely a white people get drunk, get laid, smoke some funny things, eat some food type holiday.
So this is how I imagine Cinco de Mayo. I imagine Cinco de Mayo with our new MAGA Trisha Cotham. In North Carolina, that name, and all around the country, you probably know who she is by now. She's the Democrat who switched to become a Republican in North Carolina because she says the Democrats hurt her feelings. Cinco de Mayo is like a holiday that Trisha Cotham's face comes to my mind. It would be like a drunk white lady who hangs out with her gal pals, drinking margaritas with a big sombrero hat that is saying, "Happy Cinco de Mayo," at the same time saying, "But I hate all these woke people who like diversity and stuff like that, but Cinco de Mayo, ooh, drunk one girl." That's Cinco de Mayo. So just imagine Trisha Cotham with her big drag queen hair and all her makeup, trying to get a husband for her little boys with a big old hat going, "Cinco de Mayo, but don't be woke, diversity." So what should happen is, when the Baby Z's take over, they have to pass a law that says, if you are MAGA, you cannot eat any ethnic food, you cannot celebrate any diversity, you have to stay your plain white ass at home, and everyone else can celebrate. That should be the new rule. So what do you think?
Well, it just like a lot of these non-religious, non-historical celebrations.
Sure.
That one, the Battle of Puebla really wasn't an American thing. It's not that it wasn't significant. It's just like nobody that goes out and gets drunk on May 5th knows why Cinco de Mayo is even important. And honestly, September 16th isn't really important to white people. Most people, unless you grew up in a Latinx culture like myself, that even though I'm not Latinx, I've been submerged in it and submerged, and so knowing, the high school I went to and graduated from was predominantly Hispanic. It's not unusual for people in Texas to know more of the Latinx culture because you were surrounded by it.
So we need to. Sure.
And being in a more integrated and more diverse culture, which diversity matters, it breaks down walls so that you don't say ignorant things like Trump did, which is going, everybody that's coming over, the new arrivals are all murderers and rapists and disparaging of people, and saying ignorant, fucking stupid things like that. What's really important to me is that it's fine to go out and celebrate Cinco de Mayo. What's not fine is to attack people trying to come over the southern border for a better life. It's not okay to say they're all trafficking drugs. It's not okay to commit to violence against, brown people, Latin American people. It's not okay to try to develop goon squads to go round these people up or attack them in their houses of worship or attack them at their celebrations or quinceañeras or anything like that. It's not okay by me as a white ally to the Latinx community to see that kind of fucking bullshit, because, again, if we look the other way, the way the 1936 Germans did, we're in trouble. We're in some serious fucking trouble. And I think what's most important, what needs to be learned here, besides the fact that it's funny that, Cinco de Mayo is a white people's holiday, and the irony of it, it hit me really hard when I moved to Branson. I saw that because I was moving from San Antonio, that has legitimate Latinx celebrations for a lot of different reasons, but understands their history, to move to an ignorant, low information part of the world like the Ozarks, that meth labs and, teenage moms was very, very common. It doesn't surprise me that when you go to a celebration, and it's almost 100% white people. People of color do not even exist at these celebrations at all, black or brown.
Yeah.
And it was just funny to see that many drunk white people that have no idea what Cinco de Mayo really is, other than it's an excuse to drink a ton of fucking beer. Yeah. And I think the best thing is that this restaurant and bar complex that supported it had no Latinx or Hispanic food at the event or in that restaurant. It was actually a knockoff of it was an Outback pub and restaurant that had the same name as the Outback chain, but wasn't part of the Outback chain. True story.
Yeah. Okay. Well, listen, if you like what you're hearing from Jenny, she does have a show that comes on 30 minutes after this one. It's called Two Queers in a Truck. And this last commercial, because we are about to run out of time, so we will be right back. This next commercial will talk about her show. So we'll be right back on Coffee and Pan Dulce.
Up next is Two Queers in a Truck with Jenny and Christian. And hope you guys tune in. We'll see you in about 15 to 20 minutes. Thank you. Bye.
Well, welcome back, everyone, to Coffee and Pan Dulce. Jen and I, as we were off camera, have come up with a brilliant idea. So stay tuned for the next show. It'll probably be 2 shows down. We'll see. We'll see if we actually do this, but it's going to be brilliant. So before we end our show, we do have to go into a new segment called the Pendejo Chronicles. And this is the Pendejo Chronicles. All right, this is the Pendejo Chronicles. This is where we talk about viewers like you and listeners like you, and we give them the attention and fame and all kinds of stuff that they deserve. Jenny, do you have anybody you'd like to talk about some Pendejo Chronicles? I know I do. If you don't, that it was actually on.
Please. The pleasure's all yours. The little fire.
All right. So there is it's not necessarily on this show, but on Jenny's show, she has a person that is actually quite a few people that are just fascinated by your show, Jenny. They're fascinated. They are so fascinated, they continue to, they're like stalkers. They continue to post stuff like, I don't know why I'm seeing this stuff. I don't know why. Why am I seeing this stuff? And one in particular has gone back and forth and has been posting for almost over 2 weeks now and continues to post. I don't know why I'm seeing this. And we keep posting, well, you're seeing it because you're looking for queer stuff.
Yeah. So for our listeners and our viewers that don't know how social media works, and this will keep you from embarrassing yourself, unless you're if you're a Tucker fan, you're not going to understand what I'm about to say. So for everybody else that actually can fog up a mirror, how the search engine algorithms work in social media is that if you search new cars, you're going to start seeing ads for new car companies. If you search mortgages, you're all of a sudden going to start getting a lot of mortgage things showing up on your Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook. That's how those companies pay their bills. Just like TV commercials pay for the programming that you see. So if you search LGBT, if you search gay, if you search queer, our other show is called Two Queers in a Truck. And we have those meta tags and hashtags in our advertising when we pay for clicks, that sort of thing. So if you search those out, you are going to get all kinds of things that use that as their search criteria on how to get found. Because every podcast, every commercial business, everything like that has a page on Facebook, is going to do that because that's our audience. For Two Queers in a Truck, our major audience is going to probably be allies and queer people that watch the show or listen to the show. And so these people are acting like they're just stumbling or this is being force-fed onto their feed and trying to feign, ignorance and surprise and trying to play the victim. And of course I go in there and remind them, no, the LGBT community has been in the news a lot because of Republican hate bills. You went and searched it.
Yep.
You're going to find shows like ours.
So
but it doesn't, it's not like, it's the same as when some dude gets caught with porn on his computer by his wife.
That's the best way to. Yeah.
Why is donkey porn on your computer? I don't know how they put the fish.
I don't know. I don't know how. So if you, So as Jenny said, if you're a baby Z or millennial, you understand all this. If you're a Gen Xer and a boomer, I get that maybe this is still confusing, but if you're on the computer long enough, you have to know how to clear your browsers. The same way you cheat on your wife and hide your text messages, the same way you need to look at your browser. So this Wayne House, this person's name is Wayne House, which is one of the persons from Louisville, Kentucky. He was the one that really started, one of the ones that started all of it and said, why is this shit on my feed? Well, boo, it's on it because you're trolling queer stuff. And then he won't stop. He keeps saying, no, it's not. You're making this. It's like he's obsessed with the show. Thank you, Wayne House, and all of your followers, because that one show for Jenny has now 3.3 thousand viewers. Just that one little show on Two Queers in a Truck, which is probably one of the highest ones that we've had on Two Queers in a Truck. But thank you for doing that. Because of him and others like him, people want to know what's going on.
And the best part, and this is what makes me laugh, is despite people we've been going on there laughing at, for whatever reason, and conservatives are obsessed about sexuality. They're obsessed about kids' genitalia. They're it is one of their big passions is things like that. Yeah. And so they're going to seek it out. They're going to seek out things on, to go troll. And these are people that don't listen or watch the show. The people that are anti this show, Coffee Pan Dulce, and they go in there and they're the anti-woke police, and they're the anti-LGBT police, and they're saying slurs and things of that nature. But they don't actually watch the show, because if they actually watch the show, especially when we put clickbait topics on the deal, 99% of the time what we put in the clickbait just to draw people in doesn't even get talked about on the show. Because I get put on the page post-production, so we already know what the show was about.
Yeah.
But to draw out idiots like this that will click on our page, comment on our page, move us up the algorithm, help us advertise the show, basically, because they're stupid. When they unlike TV, if you turn on a TV channel, it doesn't have an algorithm, so it doesn't move.
Yeah, your TV doesn't remember what you're watching. Yeah, but on the internet, that's how it works.
The video production is attached to a page on the social media. Every time you like it, put an emoji on it, comment on it, whatever, you're helping us out, which I want them to keep doing. That's why we put the clickbait on there, is people to click on it, get outraged, because we know the kind of people that are going to comment on it aren't our viewers, but the people that want to churn the outrage machine, go, this shouldn't be on the air, and LatinX is a slur.
This is just,
I'm going,
why am I seeing?
The fact that we have so many white MAGAs trying to defend the Hispanic community by calling Latinx a slur, it's funny because it's coming from a white boy usually. I'm like, well, you don't look very Hispanic George Jones. I mean, or Seamus McAllen. Like maybe you aren't the person that needs to be outraged. And second, if you actually watched our Latinx show and heard what we said about the term Latinx, you low information sleptwalk would understand that we're not saying that Latinx needs to be universally used.
Yeah.
It's one of those terms in the Hispanic community that's a modern iteration of language. Language evolves. There's words we use now that we didn't use 70 years ago, and vice versa. There was words in the 1950s that are unpopular that people just don't use anymore unless you're really, really old. And so language evolves, technology evolves. Keep clicking on there, you dum-dums, because I know you're not watching this right now.
That's right. Well, listen, that is the end of our show. I do want to thank, for those who are watching us, I do want to thank Fiesta St. Bernie for joining us today. And MAGA border wall baby Trump was able to stay on the entire show. He looks outraged. Look at his mouth. He looks like he's outraged. He'll be one of the first ones celebrating at Cinco de Mayo. Hey, they need to probably close down all the Mexican restaurants in Mar-a-Lago, because Trump's going to eat them out of business on Cinco de Mayo, the way he's going. So
I'm sure he eats Big Macs. I'm sure. His DoorDash delivery.
I'm the best Big Mac eater.
I'm sure he probably doesn't even know what Tex-Mex even is, or anything else. So, all right. With that said, we're finished. Thank you, Jenny. Great show. I do want to remind everyone that next week we are going to continue our last of our spring shows. The next show that we will have on is going to be our Millennials Saving America. We'll be taping that. Well, you actually see it next week when you see this. We're taping it next week. Then after that, Woke, Drag Queens, Cancer Culture, CRT, Oh My. And then our third edition of the Coffee and Pan Dulce Biggest Queens show. It's the matchup everyone's been waiting for, Trump versus DeSantis. That will be that one. That will be that show. And then the last show of May, before we go into the summer, we'll be talking about America's culture war. Is it really just a war between those with culture and those without?
So we'll be talking about those. Those are the last shows for May. With that said, Jenny, thank you so much, and hopefully we'll see Barbara again next week. We'll try to dance out here if we can get this. Is that working? All right.
Yeah.
There we go. Thank y'all. See you next week. Happy Cinco de Mayo.
Happy Cinco de Mayo. Especially white people. Hey y'all, thanks for watching Coffee Pan Dulce. Happy Cinco de Mayo for all my fellow white neighbors. And because we're the only ones that really celebrate it. But everybody else, have a great week and appreciate y'all watching or listening.
Bye y'all. Happy Cinco de Mayo.
Bye, babe. Next up, thanks for watching Coffee and Pan Dulce. Next up is Two Queers and a Truck. Stay tuned.
Let's start that one. Okay, whenever you're ready. Hey, Jen, you know what we should do? On Cinco de Mayo, since it does come on Friday, we should go around to a couple of places like in South End and interview people on camera. Can you tell us what Cinco de Mayo, the celebration, is for? And just get them on and then do like a video.
That would be fucking funny. I would do that because you know.
That would be hilarious.
You know. Because
They would have no...
and you'd have to do it around a lot of white people.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So, do you know why we actually celebrate Cinco de Mayo?
Yeah.
Just like Jordan Klepper does for the Daily Show.
Exactly. That would be hilarious.
They're not. Oh, they're not.
Yeah, they're not going to know. Maybe we'll have maybe one or two people, and we'll like, oh, that's wonderful. Okay, here we go. We'll come back.
Coffee and Pan Dulce. How's that? Coffee and Pan Dulce.
Sounds
You
great.
sounded like a telenova. I mean,